in solar masses. And its sheer existence so early in the universe presents a pretty foundational challenge to our cosmic timeline. I mean, this thing is so massive, so early, it essentially existed before the first generations of stars even had the chance to form and collapse. It's like a profound glitch in the matrix of time itself.
It is undeniably one of the most confusing, most difficult structures we've ever found. It really pushes the standard model of cosmic structure formation to a point of, well, theoretical desperation, you could say. This object throws into sharp relief the difficulties we face with black holes. I mean, objects whose physics are so fundamentally challenging that even giants like Steven Weinberg, famously hoped they would not exist in nature.
Exactly. So the central question before us today is this. Does this profound pre-stellar black hole anomaly constitute empirical proof, or maybe at least structural validation, of the phase-shifting universe model, or PSUM, with its unique claims about cosmic architecture? PSUM is this unified framework that identifies dark matter as a quantum superfluid substrate governed by hydrodynamics. My position is pretty clear. I think this anomaly is a structural validation of PSUM's unified fluid dynamic design.
And I maintain that while this finding is, yes, a severe crisis for the standard stellar collapse model, it's currently insufficient evidence to validate a highly non-standard and, let's be honest, still largely speculative framework like PSUM. The burden of proof for replacing the established cosmological model lambda CDM, it remains extremely high.
I see why you emphasize the high burden of proof, but, well, that skepticism relies on the premise that lambda CDM is some robust theory facing just a minor challenge. I'd frame the situation quite differently. Lambda CDM is currently facing a crisis of a conceptual fragmentation. As we know, physicists are on this quest to unify general relativity, GR, and quantum theory, QM, the Holy Grail, precisely because black holes are where both theories must work together and, well, currently fail. Lambda CDM is fundamentally an assembled, kind of post hoc model that relies on fitting parameters, like dark energy and dark matter, to observational data rather than deriving solutions from unified fundamental physics.
Okay, I agree that the standard model is fragmented. It's an effective description, sure, but not an ultimate theory. I concede that.
Right. So this black hole anomaly, a structure whose mass requires formation mechanisms that just don't exist within the standard timeline. It's not a glitch. It's a definitive structural failure of that fragmented approach. PSUMAT, by contrast, was explicitly designed to resolve this fragmentation. By replacing the dualistic view with a single quantum superfluid substrate, identifying dark matter as this universal fluid, we can approach cosmology from condensed matter physics. And this inherently accommodates early massive structures that, bypass the reliance on prior stellar collapse, just as this new object requires. I mean, PSUMAT basically predicted a universe where mass aggregation could happen almost instantaneously via fluid mechanics. And now we found an object that seems only explicable if that's true.
I come at it from a slightly different angle. We must first acknowledge that general relativity itself, while okay, yes, it fails at the singularity, is what correctly predicts the bizarre internal behavior of a black hole. Specifically, the swapping of the roles of space and time as matter crosses the event horizon, leading inevitably to the singularity, what is conceptually the end of time for anything falling in. So, this new data point, while definitely challenging standard formation mechanisms, doesn't necessarily invalidate the whole geometry of space-time curvature or, automatically validate a new theory built on hydrodynamics.
Yet, PSMOT offers a unified explanation for why these massive structures exist so early, while lambda CDM is now sort of scrambling to concoct yet another ad hoc mechanism. Perhaps primordial black holes forming without stellar collapse. Adding yet another parameter to an already, frankly, bloated model.
The conceptual elegance of PSUMAT is, I admit, undeniable. It's especially brilliant in how it tackles the catastrophic 120 order of magnitude error of the cosmological constant problem.
Essentially, by shifting the problem out of quantum field theory vacuum calculations and into the dynamic pressure of a fluid. But this theoretical evasion, while neat, hasn't yet produced the concrete, testable astrophysical predictions needed to rigorously reconcile QM and GR and, critically, displace the precision of the established framework. It remains a powerful analogy, I'd say, not yet a proven physical law.
Okay, that brings us directly to our first contention. The core nature of this object's origin. What's happening at the very center of collapse?
Precisely. If we accept the classical view, the fundamental problem lies in the extreme physics at the core. GR dictates that at the moment of collapse, space-time geometry becomes infinitely curved, and time effectively ends at the singularity. This is the breakdown point, the theoretical crisis, where a quantum theory of gravity is absolutely mandatory. I submit that PSU-MOT, by defining the singularity away, is currently making, well, arguably an unfalsifiable claim about what happens at this point. How can we actually test this geometric replacement you propose?
That's an interesting point regarding falsifiability, though I would frame the nature of the singularity differently. The singularity itself, I argue, is a conceptual flaw. It arises from a dual reality, this separation of geometry and matter. PSU-MOT replaces the theoretical Big Bang singularity, and by extension, the black hole singularity, with a finite, geometric keyhole interface.
Right, you're referring to the mechanism derived from CPT symmetry, the one positing a connection between our universe and a charge parity time-mirrored anti-universe?
Exactly. This keyhole is the boundary defined by circle inversion geometry, a mathematical mechanism that essentially performs a geometric flip. This mathematically links the physics of the incredibly small, the ultraviolet or UV structure, to the incredibly large, the infrared or IR structure of the universe. So it's not simply removing the singularity, it's replacing infinite collapse with a finite geometric process inherent to the universe's structure itself. This mechanism naturally accounts for the rapid formation of massive structures, like this ultramassive black hole, very early in the universe without violating causality or the established cosmic energy density. The structure is, you could say, built into the fundamental geometry of existence itself, providing an inherent mechanism for early mass assembly that stellar collapse models just cannot touch.
While the geometric elegance is compelling, the crucial challenge, I think, is translating that elegant mathematical flip into verifiable, measurable phenomena in our IR universe. We're moving from the catastrophic collapse predicted by GR, which is mathematically robust, right up until the singularity, to an alternative that relies on a specific, non-local symmetry operation to define the boundary condition. Until we can measure the consequences of this geometric keyhole, perhaps effects on the information paradox or quantum entanglement, something concrete, it remains a powerful theoretical alternative, certainly, but not a tested solution.
Okay, but if we accept the premise of PSU-MOT that these massive objects are fundamentally built into the architecture, then we have to move on to our second contention. How does this enormous mass generate gravity? In the standard model, the mass disrupts space-time itself.
Yes, gravity is understood in GR as a direct manifestation of the curvature of space and time. This curvature dictates the paths of objects, demonstrated beautifully by the equivalence principle. The force affects everything equally, whether it's a photon or a planet. How does PSU-MOT handle this extreme precision?
Well, in PSU-MOT, gravity is fundamentally an emergent effective force. It results from drag within the quantum superfluid substrate. This black hole, being a region of immense density and localized energy, is essentially a massive eddy or perhaps a wake in this universal flow. Massive objects create pressure deficits in the superfluid. The surrounding, higher pressure medium then naturally pushes matter toward the deficit, effectively creating what you might call acoustic gravity.
Acoustic gravity.
Yes. Think of it like a boat moving through water. The boat creates a wake. That's like the curvature, but the immediate force drawing things towards it is the pressure gradient in the fluid. And this hydrodynamic view is structurally supported, I'd argue, by findings like the fuzzy core of Jupiter. We expect Jupiter to be cleanly stratified based on standard physics, right? But its core is surprisingly resistant to reductionism. It behaves more like a dense fluid, dynamically organized by pressure deficits, exactly what you'd expect if gravity and structure formation were governed by fluid dynamics at some level.
That's a compelling analogy, I grant you, but have you considered that equating gravity to drag or an acoustic phenomenon immediately raises potential issues with the equivalence principle? The extreme precision of GR, which lets us predict the motion of the moon within a millimeter, is built on the fact that gravity is geometry, independent of the mass or composition of the falling object. If gravity is mediated by a medium, the superfluid, shouldn't we observe variations in the gravitational interaction based on how different objects interact with that substrate? Like differential drag, for example?
But that's where the concept of the quantum superfluid substrate is crucial. Because the substrate is universal and its fundamental components are defined by quantum mechanics, the interaction is uniform. All matter is ultimately constituted of excitations within this single substrate. Therefore, all matter interacts with this substrate's pressure gradients equally, which preserves the equivalence principle. Furthermore, if gravity is an emergent force of flow, it naturally opens the door to explaining gravitational waves as actual ripples in the superfluid, not just geometric distortions, potentially simplifying the quantum field aspect quite dramatically.
I'm still not quite convinced by that line of reasoning, primarily because it still relies heavily on theoretical coherence, observational confirmation of the medium itself. We have to consider the required empirical evidence. Plussamont, as I understand it, predicts the existence of quantized vortices, these specific chiral spinning disruptions within the superfluid. Until we can translate the observational signature of those vortices into a concrete, testable astrophysical measurement that GR cannot explain, the hydrodynamic model, however elegant, remains an analogy, not a replacement for the proven geometry of spacetime.
But we have to look at the systemic picture here. This anomaly isn't some isolated incident. The ultramassive black hole, the persistent Hubble tension crisis, the disagreement over the universe's expansion rate, and the intractable cosmological constant problem, they are all symptomatic, I argue, of the same systemic flaw in lambda CDM. Peace mode achieves a profound theoretical consolidation that lambda CDM simply cannot match.
So you are speaking now to the ultimate contention. Is theoretical coherence alone sufficient validation?
I'd say it is structural validation, yes. PSMOT unifies dark matter, the superfluid substance, and dark energy, which it identifies as the macroscopic flow or universal current of that very fluid. This intrinsically resolves the coincidence problem. Why dark matter and dark energy densities just happen to be comparable now in our current cosmic epoch. The universe is a single flowing system, and the dynamic negative pressure of the fluid bypasses the cosmological constant to catastrophe entirely. This coherence, transforming multiple major crises into a single predictable consequence. That's a profound statement about the correctness of the structural approach, I think.
I'm sorry, but I just don't buy that the unification of crises is sufficient proof on its own. Let me tell you why. While PSUMOT offers a powerful, sweeping theoretical bypass, the ultimate empirical confirmation must come from observational science that can actually discriminate between the two frameworks. We know exactly how to test for the new physics required to displace lambda CDM.
Okay. And how do you propose we test the PSUMOT framework observationally then?
We need to focus on precision cosmology. Future high-precision missions, like the European Space Agency's Euclid and NASA's Roman Space Telescope, are being built precisely to test the nature of dark energy. Specifically, if the dark energy equation of state parameter, W, is exactly -1, as in standard lambda CDM, or if it's evolving over time. An evolving W would certainly point toward new physics, potentially aligning with the dynamic nature of PSUMOT's universal current. Crucially, however, to validate PSUMOT's specific geometric and fluid dynamic origin story, we need to detect its predicted non-Gaussian signatures in the B-mode polarization of the cosmic microwave background, particularly at the largest angular scales. The current level of CMB measurement is incredibly precise. PSUMOT must produce a unique signature there, one that can be clearly isolated from standard inflationary models.
Exemplified perfectly by this prestellar black hole,
is surely evidence that the standard framework itself has broken the link between the early conditions and the present-day reality. PSUMOT offers a unified narrative that intrinsically connects the very small, the fluid substrate, to the very large, the universal flow, providing the necessary physical mechanism for exactly this kind of early mass aggregation.
And I absolutely agree that our understanding of structure growth is fundamentally incomplete within the current model. No question. However, until PSUMOT moves beyond explaining existing anomalies like turbulence manifesting as the Hubble tension or resolving conceptual crises like the CCP, to predicting a new, precise cosmological measurement that is then confirmed, it remains a powerful, coherent analogy, yes, but one still waiting for that definitive empirical validation. The precision of lambda CDM, despite its flaws, is still its greatest operational strength.
To conclude my view, the discovery of this massive early black hole exposes a deep conceptual crack in the current timeline, and I believe it can only be properly repaired by adopting a unified fluid dynamic theory like PSUMOT that structurally resolves the singularity issue and the fragmentation of physics. The universe is sending us, I think, the clearest possible signal that our fundamental building blocks and our timeline are wrong, and that the unified, flow-based approach is the correct direction.
And summarizing my position, the finding undeniably represents a crucial challenge for standard cosmology.